I want
To pay, please.
All grand. We take check or cash.
to pay, you idiot. My hair is in your machine.
Oh, no, it's only rabbits in there. The hare, I think you'll find, is a much larger mammal.
Out of my way, fool.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I haven't seen a lot of movies.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm here to help with that. And we are
SP Film Viewers. Happy New Year, everyone. 2025's here. Let's hope it's a good start. Everyone's on the, can't eat any crap now and have to go to the gym.
yeah, and the weather's still miserable and such. So
that's why you have a podcast that you watch films and it cheers you up.
and I feel like this one's going to be a good, light-hearted one to start the year off with. I wanted something. I don't know. I toying with the idea of something like bombastic or something, or like really like kick the year off with. But I was toying with loads of ideas, and I'm like, I don't know what I can do to go for.
Since to say last year you did Sound of Music, and that was became one of my favourite films.
Yeah.
It's like now a high bar for the beginning of the year.
And in a way, the fact that we've had a new Wallace and Gromit film out that came out just after Christmas, or Christmas Day for us from the BBC, and excited to watch that anyway because I've obviously grown up with Wallace and Gromit through wee lad, and I'm thinking, maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about the very first Wallace and Gromit film they made back in 2005, so that's 20 years ago.
Gosh.
And I pitched the idea to you, and you weren't so sure if you've seen it or not. But
I've seen a lot of Wallace and Gromit things, but do I know the names of them, or they've been on telly? I think that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see.
You've seen the shorts, then I take it.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that they've kind of stuck with me. Like I could name a short, like you could do The Simpsons. It's like, in the Simpsons episode, this happened and this happened. I won't be able to tell you that about Wallace and Gromit. Can you?
Do you mean the name of the episode or what happens in the episode?
Both.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for example, like, we also did watch on the back of Vengeance Most Fowl was like, it's like one of the favourite shorts of mine, particularly, I think, because it was kind of like, it's somewhat dark in a way for something that was supposed to be a children's.
Is this the introduction to the Shaun the Sheep one?
Yeah, where he makes his first appearance, and then he had a big boom after that, as it were, his big breakout role, as it were. That one's called A Close Shave.
So, I wouldn't know. I'm not like, I think as a bigger fan of Wallace and Gromit as like you would be. I won't be able to name my favourite.
Right. Well, there's only been a handful, really.
But still,
it's not like The Simpsons where there's a billion episodes.
Oh, so sorry for comparing The Simpsons to something. Gosh.
So, we're going to be talking about Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
That's pretty much what it is on the tin, isn't it? It's Wallace and Gromit. It's childlike and animation and just easygoing and fun, I'd say. I'm not really going to go into this thinking, I don't want to see it.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's not going to be that, is it? Because, like, I like Wallace and Gromit. I'm not, like, in love with them, but I know what they are about, and it's a nice thing to just put on the telly, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. So, before we go into things, to do this part as thank the Patreons, and on that point as well, for the new year, we've actually got one new Patreon, and that doesn't sound a lot, but...
Have we?
Yep.
Who are they?
Well, I put a post up on Threads about just scoping the landscape of that and going, is anybody interested in being a guest on the show for this year? And I don't know, like, normally I get few here and there, kind of thing on Twitter in the past and Instagram and stuff. But for some reason, this sparked a whole thing of like everybody and the dog is like wanting to like, oh, I'm interested. I feel we'll probably have to have him as a guest as he is a patron, of course.
100%.
But
still haven't had some other patrons on.
No. Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah. But he seemed very enthused, really, and he goes by the handle All Hail King Rhino. His name says Brett Bickley, so he's from the States.
Okay.
He seems, excited to join the family. So.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
I think the only thing is it's another boy. Like, need some female power over here. Unless he's like really into rom-coms and is going to help the girl out.
It's too early to say, to be honest. But also, obviously, want to thank other podcast friends who are Mark from 100 Things Learned from Film, Ben from Ben Pushpull Health, formerly Film Vloggers, and Nico from the Good, the Bad and the Weird podcast.
So then we've got our wonderful friends. So first of all, we've got Alex and Shani, who are on Instagram under the handle Desperately Seeking Username and SDOG. We've also then got my mum and Gren, who's on, my mum's not on Instagram, but Gren is, under the handle CGren_draw.
And lastly, but certainly not least, we've got Jonesy and Emma, who are at Weight Loss Jonesy and M_Hayton.
Does that make 10 now?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Good
Nice
maths,
random.
aren't they? So if you want to become a patron, obviously, and become part of our growing family, then you can do so. It only costs £1 to $1.50 a month. You get your name shout out and every episode, and you get to pick one film once a month.
Yep, and that'll be coming out very shortly. So if you want to do that, then all you need to do is go over to patreon.com/SP Film Viewers. Right, so on with the show, as it were.
Let's go watch Wallace and Gromit.
Right.
That's enough! Luke, this flipping vegetable competition causes nothing but trouble every year.
Here we go.
If you ask me, I'll tell you. If you ask me, this was arson.
Arson?
Aye, someone arsing around. That's right, one of you lot.
Paul,
Mm-hmm.
out of us, who do you think's Wallace and who do you think's Gromit?
I don't know. Well, in the little thumbnail I've drawn up, I'm Wallace. You're Gromit.
Good.
Is that the correct answer?
Yeah, that's the correct answer. No trick questions. I think you're more of a Wallace character.
In what way do I like cheese? Because I like cheese.
You do like cheese, but I think I'm more. Gromit seems to put you in order somehow.
Right.
Reels you back into reality, I think, a little bit. And I think that I'm more Gromit in that
If it was more the who talk more, then obviously I'm Gromit who doesn't say a great deal.
Excuse me?
But I see
because it's a dog.
I know, yeah.
Do you know, that is the second time you've been cheeky this year, and we've only on the first podcast.
Why was the
You
first?
sassed me in the beginning. I can't remember what it was, but the pre-ramble you just did, and now is this the things to come, Paul? It becomes sour in our 2025.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think it's just...
Also, you wouldn't have a podcast if I didn't talk.
That is true, but I'm just saying on the basis of I'm not talking about specifically about the podcast here. I'm just talking about in general, like how I'm quite reserved in day to day. I've
noticed, though, I do say this about myself. I can be reserved. If somebody else is going to be louder and bigger than me, I'll let them.
Mm-hmm. You're not trying to seek attention, are you?
No, but the issue is you'll just sit there and you won't talk otherwise. So I have to step up.
Yeah.
Not that I want to. So, Wallace and Gromit.
Curse of the Were Rabbit. And I don't know if this is going to bleed into it a little bit, but but I feel like it probably is. Because after seeing Vengeance Most Fowl, enjoying it, I took it upon myself to sort of beginning of this year that we're in 2025 and I started watching it again, and it's like, you came in, it's like, oh, we're putting this on again.
It's like we've literally only watched it 2 weeks ago.
I know, but I enjoyed it so much. I wanted to see it again, and this was before we started watching this film that we're supposed to talk about. So there is probably going to be some kind of like comparison / like a mini review within the main review of this, I guess.
Yeah.
If that's all right.
What if I said no? I don't think it would matter, would it? So starting with Wallace and Gromit, the werewolf rabbit thing.
Curse of the Were-Rabbit, yeah.
Okay.
And you hadn't seen this before then? Like this?
No, it's weird. It's like I know the characters. Like I remember seeing that lady Toffington or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Tottington before. Like I don't know if she's been in others.
No, the only thing I do remember, I think it may be, is it DFS, the sofa people?
Yeah.
There was like, they used to do an advert for it. I remember back in the day, obviously, I think around when it was popular, or maybe a few years after, because I think it wasn't, there was like a long pause before that happened. Obviously, it takes a long time to do the animation, so it wasn't really a quick thing they did, but they must have hired Aardman for whatever reason, just to do a promotion for the sofa, and I think
so
that she was featured in here and that, perhaps,
Right.
Yeah.
And then, like, obviously, Wallace and Gromit, I'm aware of. Watching both of them quite closely together, like the policeman, I've noticed, was the same.
But he'd in this one, he was just a PC, where I think he's in the other one, he's like upper rank, obviously, because he's much later in his career. So,
but the funny thing is, he's much later in his career, but he doesn't look like he's aged at all.
Except for his facial.
Wallace and Gromit don't look any different either. So it's like, it's quite funny that, they wanted to progress the policeman, but Wallace hasn't really changed. Yeah. So if you don't know what Wallace and Gromit is, it is a British thing.
Very British. Very British.
It's to do with Wensleydale cheese and tea.
Tea and crumpet. No. Tea, cheese, crackers. They're very iconic for here in the United Kingdom, I suppose. Like, everybody loves. They're almost like a national treasure as it were.
But better than Ant and Dec, is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
I think they are. They're very, very well loved. I think it's a upmarketed version of a cartoon.
Are you saying that because they are claymation, stop motion?
Yeah, and I think you do have some life into them. Like, it's not just a cartoon. You do really love Wallace and Gromit as characters, and you've, like you said, you've grown up with them, and they've just always, for me, been around. Like, and Wallace, he's this lovable inventor who he's got a kind soul. He's never doing anything maliciously.
No, he's not like some evil supervillain or anything like that. No. He's just an inventor who likes to try and make mostly his life easier.
He's very lazy.
Yeah, could say that, because like get out of bed, push a button, and it the bed flips over and he slides down to get in his gear and everything like that. That's
what I feel like I'd need to do to you, Paul. Like, come on, get out of bed. Go on, and you want breakfast, right? Here it
Pull
is.
Pull a lever and that.
That's why I thought I was more Gromit, to be fair.
Right.
Was more the reason, like, I'm the one pressing the buttons and doing, you have this master idea, but then somehow I end up doing part of it.
I suppose.
Like the podcast. To be fair, you do most of the work on that.
Yeah.
So, I just don't really know what Wallace and Gromit's job is. Like, he invents something, and then every time I've seen him, he's in a different profession.
Yeah.
So this one is he's
a freelancer, basically. Yeah. He's got a yeah.
But freelancers are normally like a photographer. It's still a photographer. He might be doing landscape or portraits, but he's still a photographer. Whereas this is like different professions every time. Like, he's now capturing bunnies and being
anti-pesto. Yeah.
Anti-pesto.
Bob's Burgers would be approved, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then in the gnome one we've recently watched, he's like a garden service with his gnomes.
Well, in that one, he's more of he's still inventing doesn't come cheap, and he's bills to pay, and he's like struggling to
the reality of life.
Yeah. Whereas in Close Shave, he was window cleaner, and that very simple.
But what I don't understand is everyone that we watch. I don't think it happened as much in the new one that we've just watched with the gnome. But why does everyone fancy Wallace? What is this about?
Who's everyone?
Well, Lady Tuffington or Tottington.
Tottington, yeah.
And then in the one that we watched where he's a window cleaner, he fell in love with...
Wendoline.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe he's just got some about him.
What, an innocent charm, is that what it is? I just feel sorry for Gromit.
He's pretty hard done to, isn't he, half the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it's because he's quite quiet and reserved and everything like that, or just because he's just seen as a dog, really, he's not. But yeah, he's much more capable than just a regular old dog.
He is, and I think he does a lot for Wallace, and he takes on all the responsibilities. And I think he's like, can see something and he's trying to explain to Wallace, and Wallace is just not listening.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's definitely the case in this one, where it's like, oh, well, we're doing the pest control for the rabbits because they've got this big veg competition. But then he's got this brainwashing technique that he thinks is a good idea to do with the bunny rabbits to make them convinced they shouldn't eat vegetables, and it backfires, doesn't it?
Yeah. The initial thing with that, though, is because he's so obsessed with cheese, he's put on a bit of timber, and so it's like, oh, I will try to do it my way with technology to brainwash all the bad thoughts. So
if only we could do that, everybody in January, just get rid of the idea of
us.
chocolates and cakes.
Cakes.
Very northern.
Very Yorkshire.
But I think it's Wallace's ideas. It comes from, yet again, a good place, but it's just a little bit like Gromit is a dog, and he can see that this isn't going to work and it's going to backfire. Mm-hmm. Why can't Wallace, the human, notice?
I think that's where the humour kind of comes from, and obviously, like, seeing that, like, this isn't going to bode well. You can see how it's going to play out, but it's like you're still enjoying the fact of, like, where it's going to go, or in what capacity it's going to escalate to. It's like, oh no, here we go again, type of thing. But that's just the dynamic that the two have, really, that you kind of come to expect, and then by the end, Wallace is normally like, oh yeah, told you,
right,
yeah,
Gromit.
or something like that. Yeah, and from watching the film this time around, it's been a long time since I've seen it last. To be fair, I don't know if you found the story quite simplistic or very much catered to a younger audience with this.
I think this is because
compared to the Vengeance Most Fowl one, yeah,
even the title's more harder to speak. Like for a child, Vengeance Most Fowl compared to
Curse of the Were Rabbit.
Yeah. Already in the title, you can see there's a difference. Mm-hmm. I think if I hadn't watched the two in conjunction near enough with one another, I probably wouldn't have said this was simplistic.
Yeah, that's what I know. The reason why I thought, oh, let's go back to that, see how that compares, because obviously that was such a long time ago anyway, and that had been their first outing as like in a feature-length film, as it were, as opposed to just seeing the shorts when they were back in the late 90s, basically, and then it wasn't for a much while longer. You kind of say starved of them appearing on anything really, and they're like, oh wow, this is what they can do with a longer outing with it and all. Obviously had a lot more production value backed behind it by DreamWorks, who you more typically know now for like Shrek, Kung Fu Panda and stuff, and obviously they did do stuff with 2D animation as well, so they were established at that point, and so they kind of worked together to bring this to life. But I think, as I understand it, there was a lot of butting heads going, no, you've got to change this to suit an American audience, but that's not what Wallace and Gromit is, really. You can't really tweak that because it just wouldn't work, so they kind of like, thanks for the input, but we're going to still kind of do most of this our way, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Basically, because I think there was like, I had a look into it with obviously the lingo and stuff. Majority of I think is kept the same, but I don't know why they apparently they changed Gromit's prize marrow. He's got in his greenhouse and everything. They changed that to a melon because for some reason they think Americans won't know what a marrow is.
Right. Okay.
So that's one of the things they changed.
Just look like a melon, I guess. You could get away with a huge watermelon.
for those who don't know, in the stateside or whatever, a marrow is more akin to something like zucchini or courgette variety.
Zucchini for the Americans then, because we call it courgette over here.
Yeah. Or any other countries, yeah. So with that, I think that's partly why it kind of felt like, especially coming back to it, more like child friendly, because again, it's got to appeal to a mass audience as opposed to being just entirely set mainly for focusing on a UK audience who understand, like, you know,
yeah, because
sensibilities
it's like
of it.
Americans have their own kind of niche things, don't they? That is just like
And we don't go
Americanized.
complain, like high school things, or we can't, change the.
Yeah, that's not our format of high school, so you need to change it
for us to understand it. Whereas, they,
yeah, I think it's more just like a culture thing.
It's
but
not half
obviously,
the time. Yeah,
Americans are a lot bigger than England is, so probably that's why.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think the rabbits in this are really cute, though. Like the fact that they're all done out of clay, the way that they move, just making it look really sweet and cute. I do wonder how they do the were-rabbit, because he looks fluffy.
Oh yeah, it'll be the similar kind of the way they do all the characters and everything. It's kind of majority of them are clay based, with obviously fabric for clothes and all that. But inside the skeleton, as it were, they've got like little armatures, which are the little metal posable bones that they'll do.
Making him into a puppet, but I mean, how does he make him fluffy if it's clay? So he's got like clay underneath, and then they've made the fluff.
I don't know how the strip back it goes, but yeah, it's kind of the same thing again, like adding fur to something, like either it's just plastic underneath or something, of not plasticine, but some other kind of material and work the same way. Just obviously you can't really. There's no way to make it just normal clay look fluffy without.
Well, I think that's what I'm meaning, because like obviously the bunny rabbits are just clay; they're not.
I think
fluffy.
that's probably because it's a hell of a lot easier to animate just flat colour of the rabbits, as there are a lot of them, as opposed to one big massive one that's more monstrous, as it were. So, and obviously that makes it more stand out.
To be honest, I didn't find it that predictable, like how there was a little bit of a plot twist. It wasn't like this is, right, this is Wallace and Gromit, and this is how it's going to start, and this is the ending, and it was like a little bit like, oh, okay, the were-rabbit is Wallace, which does take you through a little bit of a. Obviously, it makes sense now, thinking that they swapped like thoughts and brains and everything. Yeah. But you wouldn't have thought he'd turned into were-rabbit when the moon does the thing.
Only because you mentioned about the lunar beams or whatever that hit him when he was doing the thing like a Dr. Frankenstein making a monster, really. Which I think is what's sort of paying homage to, like that kind of era, really, just like B-movie monsters and all that kind of stuff, and tongue in cheek in that sense.
Yeah, I do think they do really well with all the character designs, how everything is done. Like, I think sometimes, yes, the story might be a little bit simplistic, but at the same time, it's watching it as a photographer, it is like wow, how many? I'd love to know like how many shots were taken for the whole film.
Yeah, I think it took for like a day's work. They would only have like about 3 minutes. 3 seconds worth of usable footage from a day's work. So think about that. Like,
it's just the thought of like, oh right, okay, Wallace is gonna now drink his tea.
Yeah, and
it's like, right, lift. So every time, like 1, 2, every time he's moving his hand up to his mouth, there's like, and somebody moving it ever so slightly because it never looks jagged. It never looks jarringly.
Doesn't. It always looks smooth. Yeah, that's what.
I think that's what the thing is like in a film. Like, we watched Love Actually over Christmas with the commentary on, and it was pointed out like they did a little bit of a whoopsie with the ties. Like, he'd put on the wrong tie. Did what's his name?
Hugh Grant character, the Prime Minister. Yeah. So like on the close-ups, he's got this blue spotty tie, and then on like the wider shots, he's got like more like a black spotted striped tie. Like that, yeah. And it was like, wow, I've never noticed that. But it shows like in this the level of detail, like they have to be, because it would be more glaringly obvious because it's so simplistic. But then
B, it has so many things going for it. But, like, if you missed a step of Wallace lifting his arm up...
It looks a bit janky, or it moved ever so slightly the wrong way or something, and yeah.
So it's like the photographer and the puppeteer have to work seamlessly together.
Like the storyboard in a film like this, it would have to be absolutely meticulous, because you can't afford to waste time to reshoot a scene of that. I know it's obviously because it's all like controlled light and everything. It's not like going outside in the daytime. It's like, oh, well, it's going to get dark soon. We've got to shoot this tomorrow or everything like that.
You need lamps and everything.
But even so, it's like, oh, we've just taken that set down or moved it away and kind of stuff. Need the cameras for the other. I don't know. Yeah, it's always impressive to something like this, and even the fact of that Vengeance Most Fowl is kind of like the same principle of animation and is still going and still looks fantastic is just so impressive.
I think it's the idea of the passion behind it. I think for it to keep going long.
You've got stories that you want to tell, and you've got the drive to tell them, and that's what's important, really. No one's going to be interested if it's a crap storyline. So.
Yeah. And even like with the werewolf rabbit, you kind of feel sorry for Wallace. Like, he's like, oh, well, he's the one who being anti-pesto. He's the one that's like saving everybody's gardens. There's a massive big veg competition. And he's like the saviour. And then it kind of goes a bit south because obviously he's like, oh, what do I do with all these rabbits? I've just got them cooped up in my basement. He's going to get to a point where, what do I do with them? And he's been humane by not killing them, which is quite surprising back then, to be fair. Like, it
wouldn't fly as a kid's film, would it, if you just decapitating them?
True, but I think it's more like back then people weren't as fussed.
Well, that's why you've got the villain character who's...
he reminds me of Gaston a little bit, like the...
brutish,
yeah. Thinks he's amazing, but actually... Oh, Lord Farquaad.
Yeah, from Shrek, I guess, yeah. But more so like Gaston with obviously like you think he's like, oh, I'm going to, win the affections of Lady Tottington.
It was funny because when he came on, I was like, oh, what's his voice? Like, I thought he was from the IT crowd,
Matt Berry.
Yeah.
No,
literally.
You'd know if it was him. He's got such a distinct
I think
voice.
it just looked like it should be him drawn as a character, if that made sense. Like, it looked like him.
Yeah, it could have been at that point. But I don't know how, thinking about back. No, I'm sure it would have been a big household name at that point, because he's done lots of like work for in the obviously stateside and stuff, and obviously like What We Do in the Shadows and stuff. That's had a big boom and stuff. But so I can't say that they wouldn't have done well. But that was another thing as well, because they wanted to change which I don't even know how that would even work. They wanted to change the voice of Wallace from Peter Sallis, who's done the voice of Wallace for like ever since it's been created, to obviously appeal to a mass audience in the States. But they're like, no, we cannot do that at all. So we'll get voice cast of well-known like UK celebrities, who are Ray Fiennes, who is Voldemort from Harry Potter and other things, and also like Grand Budapest Hotel and stuff. And then we've got Helena Bonham Carter, who's Lady Tottington as well. So people
she's
again
from Harry Potter as well. I don't know if as well with this being like in early 2000s, like Harry Potter was, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah. There's like early
booming.
2000s, yeah, it was, yeah. So
it's kind of like a really...
Again, that's why I think, we'll get those actors in to do the voices, and people will see that on the casting list, and I know who they are.
Well, you would if you knew what they were called. Like, so like the third film was out in 2005.
Yeah.
So Voldemort would have been apparent. I don't know if Bellatrix would have been as profound.
But you know her from other works, which interestingly enough, you'd find out there was another 2005 stop motion animated film at that time, Corpse Bride, and she did a voice in that as well. So
she did.
Yeah.
But I feel like she suits Corpse Bride more in that kind of...
Because Tim Burton, yeah.
Then she does this, like, I would have never pinpointed her.
Yeah, she's very much putting on a posh.
Yeah, she does not sound like herself.
Yeah. But again, that's star power that's trying to drive the film to...
I don't think it needed it, to be fair.
But there we are.
I just always feel like Wallace and Gromit, like, Gromit is like the underdog, literally.
Yeah.
Like, bless him, he's got like a big marrow, and he does win, but he don't win in the way that he would have probably have hoped to have won.
No.
Like, he wants to take his marrow to the proper competition, put it down, and be compared properly against everyone. Instead, he has to lure the rabbit
Yep.
with his big marrow, and it gets squashed.
Mhm.
And he's just like, then he gets this is the bent carrot trophy as a thank you. And it's just a bit like, and still Wallace is like idolised somehow, even though he's the one that was causing the whole carnage.
Yeah.
And just think he gets away with murder.
Does a bit, in it, but again, it's like, oh, you little scoundrel, you.
Yeah.
You
Like,
kind of just forget about that, isn't it? Because I like how most of again, I don't know if it's just a jab at sort of like small like townsfolk or anything, but how like they're all like kind of like, oh, angry mob kind of thing, but then like the simplest thing is like they turn or like convince so quickly, like when so Wallace, what are you going to do to help us out here? And it's like, well, just build a big trap. Gromit's like slaps his head, thinking, oh, that's a stupid thing. They're like, oh wow, he's a genius.
Yeah.
And it's just like go along. It's like, oh my god, yeah. But again, that's the charm of it. Like,
but also I think it's a bit of a dig to the British as well, because we are a little bit gullible that way. Like, and we're so we either love you or we hate you. Like, one minute we'll be like, oh, you're amazing, and the next you'll be like shot on a shoe.
I don't know if that also would. I think it translates to like small town America places as well. I think, to be fair, they're obviously more gun heavy with things. So they got more. They're very much more angrier. But obviously, when British people can get angry, they can have their way as well. So,
but also, do you think the mob bit's a bit like Shrek when they do trying to like take over his swamp, and everybody's like, then all the people are going to go after Shrek because it's like they don't want him in the swamp. And it's kind of a Gaston Beauty and the Beast vibe as well.
But also, like I say, it's more like, again, like the old horror, like monster movies, where it's like, oh, kill the beast kind of thing and chase him out kind of thing. That's what takes inspiration.
If there was a were-rabbit around and all it wanted to do were eat vegetables, I wouldn't really be that upset.
They even called this, classed this as the world's first vegetarian horror film.
He's not harming anybody, really, is he?
No. Even the fact of like when Gromit like discovers that it's the were-rabbit footprints are leading to Wallace's room, and then he like opens the door and he looks and is like, oh, that's what in a normal horror film would be like, oh, blood and guts, but it's the destroyed like vegetables, and it's like he's like, oh my god,
all the claws and seeds.
So it's spilled out. So that's quite clever in that sense as well for that. But honestly, like, don't get me wrong, it was still very much enjoyable to revisit this one.
Yeah.
And how they say, can't fault the animation really for how it's put together and everything. It's still impressive, and I think it's just strange that it just seems that, like, looking back and looking into it more, like, obviously when I was much younger I wouldn't have known anything about and a clue about like how much involved in the studios and stuff, I think, but we're a more adult head, like, oh yeah, kind of like how things have the way they were, or how much interference it's had to be the way it is, that kind of thing. It's quite interesting. But for that then, before we go into, we're talking about Vengeance Most Fowl very in a small capacity, did you enjoy this film overall?
Yeah, no, I did. I think the only thing is, obviously, when we go into I want to just call it the known one because it's easier. It does have a more in-depth storyline, I think. And if you compare the two, I think I would pick the more current one. However, that doesn't say I don't appreciate and value where they've come from, and obviously the amount of effort and work that's gone into the were-rabbit. Yeah, it is obviously then helped them grow to then think, oh, actually we can do this one now, and it probably takes them we was looking to 5 years or something to create a Wallace and Gromit film, which sounds absurd, doesn't it? But the amount of effort and editing and people that you need on it, I think sometimes you have to think, well, yes, it's very simplistic and it's nice to put on the telly, but at the same time, it's a very good craft and art that is kind of dying a little bit, and not a lot of people do it.
Probably because it's quite expensive to do that, and if it isn't a household name such as Wallace and Gromit, then are people going to be invested enough to, like, is it going to bring money back from sales of merchandise and all that kind of stuff?
And I think it's nowadays everybody wants everything quick and fast, and they just want everything there on the plate.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a labour of love in a sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, really enjoyed it. Do you think Wallace gets away with murder? Love Gromit to bits. Out of the two, I'd say I'm more of Team Gromit.
Yeah.
I just think to say he's the dog, he's got more sense. But he's really loyal and loving towards Wallace. And I think overall it just kind of gives you that nice comfort feel. Makes you want some cheese and tea. Don't really get the crackers, but I guess obviously you have to have cheese and crackers, don't you?
Don't forget the crackers, Gromit. I wouldn't also talk about the little version of what Wallace becomes a hutch. The rabbit who gets brainwashed from that initial experiment and then sort of becomes like an extension of...
And I think it's nice because obviously the lady, she like builds a bunny sanctuary in her manor house.
Yeah.
And she's got Hutch as a, like, Wallace reminder.
Yeah.
Because she was falling in love with Wallace, wasn't she?
Well, it's so led to believe, yeah.
Sounds like she was breaking up with him when he didn't capture the rabbit.
Yeah.
A bit harsh.
The drama there.
What about you?
What about me?
Did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Still did. But I think whether it's because Vengeance Most Fowl is more recent, it's fresh, it's kind of like seem to have a lot of hype around, or should I say popularity at this moment in time, because it's probably just come out and everyone's like, oh my god, it's the greatest thing ever. I don't know if a lot of people have seen like the Curse of the Were-Rabbit before or not. Obviously they probably know the shorts, because obviously why would they be showing so much interest in Wallace and Gromit as a thing, because the penguin in that is from one of the shorts, so that's the connection there. But I do prefer Vengeance Most Fowl over as the Were-Rabbit. But here's your scoring first, because you haven't seen.
Am I just scoring the Were-Rabbit?
Yeah, firstly. Yeah.
It's so hard. I feel like it's a really low score that I'm going to give, and it's not. It's not.
Ooh, spicy.
It's not low, really.
Okay. Okay. Right.
It's more my mediocre score for this, I think.
Right.
And I feel a bit harsh because, like, I know how much effort's gone into it. But I think it's just because we're comparing the two that I'm a bit like, it's not as profound in my books. And I think what they've tried to do in the new one is have more, like, inventions, have more, like, it's just really eye-catching. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more story to it. And I think for that, then I think this would probably sit for me like a 7. But then I feel like that takes away all its amazing. But I think it just gives me room to score the other one a little bit higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, 100%.
Not a singing in the rain or Sound of Music.
Start her off. Right?
No.
I don't think, to truth, I don't think it's going to be like, it's a 10 out of 10 film. But I think just for, let's say, a way to start the new year off, something that's kind of like within the public eye, as it were, like for the 2025, because of this new Wallace and Gromit film. So that's why I lumped the two together, as it were.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know what you think of the new one, but based on that score. But for me, I honestly, in all honesty, I think I'm going to put Curse of the Were-Rabbit at probably an 8, almost creeping into 8.5.
Oh, wow.
But I think it's probably a safer bet to put it at 8, really, because again, it's still very good in terms of like the production of everything, but I think the story doesn't, for me, in my adulthood, it doesn't hit the same way as it probably did when I was a lot younger. I really appreciated it for saying face value of what it was going for, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a great Wallace and Gromit film of the time, and then not knowing, whether it would even happen again, like for another one. So, kind of obviously glad that we do have a new one to enjoy and talk about and everything like that. So, and I guess we'll go into that now.
Nobot, recharge time.
So there's a gnome
Norbot.
that's been invented.
Yeah,
and
a smart gnome.
He gardens. Clean and tidy, clean and tidy.
Neat and tidy.
Oh, damn, I couldn't even do that right. God's sake, Sos. And he's an amazing gardener. But the only thing is, this is why I think I'm Gromit.
Yeah, it's too controlled, isn't it? Like what he thinks is neat and tidy.
Yeah.
Is very different from what Gromit's is, because he looks back at it when it's all done. It's like, oh, where's all my flowers gone? And
yeah. And I think I really love gardening, and I think if this Norbot came into my garden in the summer and started,
I'd say just say trim the hedges.
As long as it trimmed the hedges, that would be fine. If it started trimming my flowers, it would get broken into bits.
Maybe mow the lawn. It'd be done in 2 seconds.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
As long as you don't mow anything else.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's more just because it's obviously better quality cameras and stuff these days, like the visuals, intricacies like on those shots with in the garden, it looks absolutely like amazing, like pristine, like the little levels of detail, the blades of grass and everything. And it's just...
It does look like a little miniature garden that they've got going on, and it's just beautifully done. And I think on this, you're really rooting for Gromit. You feel sorry for Gromit because it's kind of like he's being shoved to the side a little bit, like an outcast. Like the gnomes have come in and he's bringing Wallace money and all of that. So it's more like he's partnering up with the gnome in the van instead of Gromit.
Yeah.
So you do feel sorry for Gromit. And then he's taken his garden hobby away as well. So like now he's like, well, what else have I got? And he's invented a thing that pats him, so he doesn't even get any affection.
The whole thing of this, it was initially just going to be like a 30-minute short, a bit like The Wrong Trousers or Close Shave, which it just entirely set around the fact that these smart gnomes are initially doing good chores, but then they cause a bit of chaos, and that'd be that. But they somewhere down the line think, how can we flesh this out a bit more, and to bring back a very much iconic character of the series from The Wrong Trousers, the little penguin called Feathers McGraw, they kind of rumbled in that short, and then they're coming back, I don't know, maybe 30 odd years later to come back with a vengeance, as it were, as the title suggests, and that helped. Like, they've got a proper villain now for the story, and he's controlling it with like using the technology to manipulate the gnomes for... The
fact that the gnome even has an evil option, though, that's the bit where Wallace has gone wrong.
Yeah, why would you have such a setting,
Yeah, that's the issue.
Again, but you take it for how it is as like it's a cartoon, essentially.
Should just be cut the grass, basic terms, good.
Yeah.
Then this would not happen, but then you wouldn't have a film. I think just the visuals in this is just, like you were saying, a lot more appealing. The more inventions they have, like, as well, I feel. Like, the initial waking up in the morning is the same, but it's extended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always, every time we see this, they kind of, like, up the ante on the level of, like, what ways can we make it the same, but different in a good way. Like, he's got a routine of he has a bath, he goes on a tube around the side and everything, and then, still putting his, obviously, like, his iconic, like, what's it called, sweater vest thing on, his trousers and everything.
And his slippers.
And
yeah.
All that stuff. But keeping it fresh and...
He doesn't have a love interest in this one, does he, though?
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't, which is refreshing.
Again, that in itself is probably, like, a good thing, because it's like, oh, here we go again, who is he going to fall in love with this time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for us, it's kind of the policeman and the younger...
Yeah, the new starter, yeah.
She's kind of like mainly your lead lady, I'd say.
Yeah. No, she's really, I think, again, that's quite refreshing to have a character like that who's kind of like, a bit cautious, and obviously new, starting on the job and trying to get to grips with everything. But it's almost like the Wallace and Gromit thing of that, isn't it? The constable thinks he knows best, and she's a bit like, well, should we be doing this?
Yeah.
But she's got more of a voice, essentially.
Literally.
As well. And so, I kind of like that dynamic as well, and including that in with all, Feathers McGraw coming back.
I think
to
there's a lot
still-
more people and more characters to kind of be invested in with this, and that's kind of creating the story, because obviously
Yes.
you've got the penguin who's in prison,
Yeah.
and that kind of funny, like, oh, well, you're in a zoo.
Yeah.
And then you've got the policemen and woman.
Yeah.
And then you've got obviously Wallace, and then the gnomes, and it's just like a whole kind of collective.
Yeah, it's kind of like in any sort of like sitcom or something or animated show. You normally have two separate storylines for characters, so you don't get bored of the same one.
And I think that's the difference between this one and the Were-Rabbit.
Yeah.
Like, it literally just is.
Majority focusing on, thinking about it, it's the Wallace and his...
Yeah.
There's no break away from that, is there? No.
And I think that's what makes this more interesting.
Yeah.
And it kind of has a bit of a horror vibe.
Again, it's like a throwback to those early shorts. Having that sort of like thriller edge to it as well. Like even the music has that kind of score as well. With the,
I think it's like with the penguin and also the gnome, like you get that kind of
the horror element comes from the gnome with the black dead eyes, kind of like staring at you.
But even like the lighting when the penguin is around, like it's that kind of more sinister.
Yeah.
Compared to like being well lit.
Yeah. Because he's no mouth, he's got no eyebrows. You can't using those techniques to sort of like make him look villainous because you don't know what he's thinking really.
Yeah,
and he's
I love the little red glove on his head
to make him look like.
And the daft thing about it is, I know I've seen him. I can't remember actually the Wallace and Gromit short, but I know of him.
Yeah.
And even like the showing the sheep and the farmer, I don't know if it's just like you're born with it because you're British and it's just...
Yeah. Well, the farmer character who did make an appearance in this very briefly, I think he came much later after the fact once they decided to do something with Shaun the Sheep and his own show and everything like that.
I think for me, it just shows like sometimes you're trying to be nice for somebody. So Wallace is making this thinking he's improving Gromit's life. Yeah. Like, oh, you don't have to do all this manual labour. This robot can do it for you. Over
reliance on technology, as we kind of are more these days, aren't we? But
then that shows that like Gromit didn't actually want that. He enjoyed doing his garden. That was like his relaxation.
Yeah.
And I think Wallace just didn't appreciate that side of it. He just thought he was like, oh well, I'm not a lazy person. If someone can get me out of bed and make my breakfast and put my clothes on and bath me, then I'll let them.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you need to realise when you're giving something like that, would that person actually appreciate it just because you would?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're going to.
Yeah. And even the fact of like, oh, we haven't used the teapot in forever. And it's like, how do you work this thing? There's no buttons to press to make a cup of tea. When they take all away the evidence.
Very apt of how we are today. Like, what would we do now if we couldn't Google something? Like,
I know,
we'd be like, where do we get the information from? And I think that's something that's like massive. Like, I think that's when you used to retain a lot of stuff more because you couldn't just get on a device and find it.
Yeah, I remember this is, I don't show my age or anything, but obviously before, like, really, even before dial-up computers and stuff, you know, like a big, massive encyclopedia of maybe potentially outdated information to find just something about something. I don't know.
Dinosaurs, you mean, Paul?
No, not just dinosaurs. I mean, just like anything about the world or
true.
In particular. Or you go to a library and try and find a book about something there, wouldn't you? But I don't even know if libraries exist.
I think they do, but they're very far between.
Yeah.
I think it's like for me, like every time I want to watch something, or I always go, oh, I wonder how old they are. And literally you just get on your phone, you Google it, and you find the answer in like 2 seconds. Yeah. Would I be asked and care how old somebody is and have to go to a library and find out? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, really. And I think this is kind of a really well done modern version of Wallace and Gromit. It's kind of grown in its time with it, the way that the story is and everything.
Which also is, in a way, kind of odd because not everything, they haven't got like, you know, like how the Simpsons would do it now, where we've got a smartphone. But
I didn't like that.
But, you know, like from way back when they were using, you're still like using VHS tapes and stuff.
Like a normal phone that's wired to the wall.
Whereas in this, it's like in the police station, answering all the calls, and it's still those typical traditional like corded phones that just picking up because it's understandable rather than like a smartphone that you.
Oh, I don't think that'd work.
Yeah, I know. So there's that again, that British charm or just the charm of like of that time, but yet all the inventions are kind of like modern, obviously like all these fandangled circuit boards and everything thing, but some of the technology isn't still not quite there. But again, that's probably the case from a lot of like the science fiction films where like from the 50s when they made it look like, oh, look at this amazing technology, but still looks somehow dated.
Yeah.
In a time when it's like supposed to make it look like futuristic.
Yeah, Back to
like
the
that.
Future.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, though, for this, I think it's one of those where you could put it on whenever and it wouldn't feel like it's like a Back to the Future where it's like, oh, they were trying too hard in 2024.
I can't really say that again for the animation. Like, there's no way that it could look dated. Really, that's the thing.
No.
It's
just Wallace and Gromit. It's just their timestamp. It doesn't look old. It doesn't look dated.
Mm-hmm.
Even comparing the two, apart from like it was visually more brighter and more colourful and more detailed. That's the only thing I could say.
I think there may be some uses. Obviously, like I'm thinking of like the fire and stuff and certain things like smoke. Something that might have to. There's no way you can really do that effectively unless you're like a Wes Anderson film where that's with like Fantastic Mr. Fox or something where you're doing some kind of thing that make it look like fire, but not. But for that it works, but it wouldn't work if you tried to do it the way that Aardman are doing it. In the thing, you have to use a bit of CGI effects for those kind of things. But still, it's
when
not.
They said that, I didn't really notice it that much. It wasn't overly obvious that there was some CGI in it. Like it wasn't glaring.
And also the fact of obviously Peter Sallis has like long passed away. Rest in peace. But the new voice for Wallace, who is by Ben Whitehead, and he's pretty much sounds on point. Really, you would barely almost recognise it wasn't the same person.
Oh, to be honest, I didn't. I won't lie until you pointed it out. But then I think that's like going back to The Simpsons now. For some reason, we rewatched. I think it was a Christmas special, wasn't it?
Come on, all you faithful, or something like that. And it was I mean, I haven't watched a lot of the new series, but it was very jarring to hear like Marge in particular. I don't know if it was the same voice actress, but she sounds like very different, and it's just I didn't sit.
Yeah, I don't know if it's aged or if they've got somebody different, and she sounds more like her sisters.
Yeah, she smokes 50 packs a day or something.
Yeah, pretty much.
But that's it's just a thing with age. You can't keep everybody around forever to do the voices of famous characters. It's just you just have to try and adapt as best you can. If someone can mimic them as best they can without like creating some like again with technology thing here, like doing some AI technology to just sample all the words they've said in the past and make it sound like exactly like.
They probably could do it.
Yeah, they would, but I think why do that when you can have someone who's got a job to be doing to fill that role.
Exactly. The AI will eventually wipe everybody's job out. To be fair. Yeah,
this is a scary thing. This is probably why it's quite prevalent as a film today. But I think we've got all that really. I think there's just a lot of small background gags. Again, on the second watch of it was really good, and trying to pick out some more from there. Keep an eye out for things like that, and just
Wallace just gets into trouble too much.
It does.
And then Gromit has to sort it.
Yeah. But no, I highly recommend watching that. But what would you score this over?
So I'm going to score it lower. After all that. No, I'm not. I lie. I'd probably say it's a strong 8.5 or a 9.
That's a big step up, isn't it? From I think
the storyline's just more gripping. You're more invested. And it's not really Wallace's fault in this one. Like, he's not being stupid, just thinking, we'll try this invention and see if it works. He did make a gnome Norbot that did do what it should do, and then the penguin got involved and hacked it, which is more relevant within today's times, and it's not really his fault that it got hacked. Anyone can get hacked nowadays, so it does seem more realistic, more in tuned. It's more colourful. It's more bright. It's just got a lot more story to it, and
just more intrigue. Yeah, suspense and all that
works well.
Yeah. See, initially gave it a 9 for the first watch, letterboxed. I certainly think it's gone up, but I don't know if it's quite 10.
I was wondering if it was going to be a 10.
I think it's going to be 9.5 at this moment, but I think that's probably, again, because it's so fresh, and especially rarely watch something in the space like 2 weeks time to enjoy it that much. But I think it helps with a very short run time to that, and something that's kind of easygoing as opposed to something really heavy and dark and moody to let's stick that on again. I predict that it probably will eventually go up to 10, but as it stands, I'm going to leave it 9.5 because I think there's probably room for improvement, but I don't know. Can't specifically pinpoint where that is. I think it's. I'm just going to leave it there.
No, I appreciate that. And I think it's one of those things where you're like, well, what makes it a 10? And then you always have to compare what you already marked as a 10.
Yeah.
And you're like, can I justify this being a 10? But we'll ask you in his retrospective at the end of this year.
Watch it another 10 times.
If your mind's changed.
Yeah. Right, okay. I think that's a solid episode for the first 2025, I think. Encompassing 2 films there.
Still don't think it's strongest sounds music. But just going to say.
But thank you for listening. And if you want to check out some of our other episodes, then you can do so by going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get podcasts from.
If you want to follow us on social media and get more content, then you can do. We are on pretty much every platform. So we're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Threads, under the handle SP_filmviewers, and then Blue Sky, we're just SP filmviewers. Is that right?
All one word, yeah. Correct. Yes, we are. Seems Threads is somehow had a little bit of a boom from this year, so hopefully that continues. Obviously, you can also check out, if you want to, it helps boost the channel anyway, subscribe to the YouTube channel, SP_filmviewers, because I've been starting to re-upload episodes on there if that's your preferred platform, to do that. Obviously, I'm going to try to start pumping out more actual vlog content and stuff this year. That's something like a bit of a personal goal. So if you want to keep on top of that, appreciate the support there. And also appreciate any 5-star reviews over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, and wherever else they do the scoring system.
Yeah, most certainly. I think it's going to be a good podcasting year.
Yep.
Excited.
More guests lined up.
More people to dislike me and love you. Yep.
Maybe, yeah. Who knows?
Always.
Yep. I do think there's a good slate of films to cover, especially as it's like, finally that's a reason to watch 4K of this film, because it's finally had a release that on the backlog of stuff. So I think it's oh yes, this is a good excuse to do that as well, because it's holding off on certain films to maybe there'll be a better version of that coming out, and then it's you're seeing the best quality you can, really, rather than some muddy old,
I appreciate
old discs. So always helps. So thank you very much for listening once again, and we'll speak to you next time.
Speak to you next time.
Bye.
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 Bye.